So students, this is Stephen Spender, 1909 to 1995, an English poet and essayist. His major thematic concerns include social injustice and class inequalities, which is what we see in this poem as well. Elementary school classroom in a slum. His some of the famous, most known books are Poems of Dedication, The Edge of Being, The Creative Element, The Struggle of the Modern, and even an autobiography, that is World Within World. So Stephen Spender, who took keen interest in politics also, but a poet at heart. Stephen Spender. A peacock is known to be a proud bird, and a girl or a boy who is very proud, then can we compare the girl or the boy with the peacock by using this as? She was as proud as a peacock. Now look at another example. Think of winters. Our toes, our feet get really cold. They are almost frozen, no? Chilled. So compare them with ice cubes, and can't you say his toes are as cold as ice cubes? That is, his toes are freezing cold. His toes are as cold as ice cubes. Now think of all these comparisons. Thin as a toothpick, white as a ghost, fit as a fiddle, dumb as a post. Yes or no? Poor as a church mouse, strong as an ox, because ox is used to plow the fields, in oxen carts. Cute as a button, smart as a fox, bald as an eagle. Eagle is a bald bird, doesn't have any plumage on its head, so it gives us an that image of a bald person without any hair on the top of his head. Neat as a pin, proud as a peacock, ugly as sin. Well, do you see there is no literal comparison between a mouse and you? If you are as quiet as a mouse, then you could be compared to a mouse, but not literally. The element, the aspect of quietness is common to both of you. So he was as quiet as a mouse. She swam like a fish. Now, literally, fish is altogether different living being. Fish is not a human being, and you are not a fish, but you swim like a fish. That is, that attribute of swimming, the aspect of the art of swimming is common to both of you. She swam like a fish. And do you see the usage of as and like here, which is very, very characteristic to simile. But when we talk of metaphor, it is an implicit comparison, like Ali is a walking dictionary, time is money. Ali is a walking dictionary. He is not just like a walking dictionary, he is a walking dictionary. It is implicit in this sentence that he sometimes seems like a dictionary who is walking that way. On her first day of school, Jane was as cool as a cucumber. As cool as a cucumber. Cucumber is used in salads, is used to cool our bodies as well in summers, So comparison between Jane, who is a girl, and cucumber, which is a vegetable. Different leagues, different categories, but then something in common. That is their coolness. Jane is cool in temperament, while cucumber has a cool chemistry about it. So, but only that we have to use as here, as cool as. Or you could use like also when it is simile. Now let's talk of a metaphor. Noah has a heart of a lion. Noah has a heart of a lion. The lion's heart has courage. Noah also has the same courage as that of a lion. So both are comparable because the courage is common to both of them. But mind you, you are not using any as or like over here. The sun was a gleaming pearl. You see, gleaming pearl. Sun is a pearl. That means it's not just like a pearl, but it is a gleaming pearl.
My baby brother is a cute little teddy bear. Well, the other way of saying could happen, my baby brother is like a cute little teddy bear. But here we chose not to use this like, because it is too much of a teddy bear like, So my baby bear is a cute little teddy bear. Something in common between them. Both are fluffy, both are soft, right? My sister's memory is a camera that remembers everything we see. My sister's memory is a camera. Yes, both have the same attributes, almost like a camera. My sister's memory is a camera. You could use her memory as a camera, right? My car seat is a fluffy cloud. Custard is happiness in a bowl. Someone who is fond of custard, or someone who is fond of, let's say, ice cream. Ice cream is happiness, happiness made of milk. Let's say. So that way you are directly, in fact, directly implying this meaning that there is something very strongly common to both these different things. So that you might be wondering as to why I gave an onslaught of so many metaphors, cartwheeling, and simile examples of simile somersaulting, rushing onto all of us. Yeah, because this poem by Stephen Spender, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum, has got a lot many metaphors, some very complicated as well, but a beautiful combination and a beautiful concoction of images which the poet assumes us and expects us to imagine to understand his idea of what an elementary school classroom he sees and he visits and sees looks like, and what his feelings are like. We will go in the sequence of his emotions and see how many metaphors are in order. Let's see. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor. Do you see some metaphoric implications here? The gusty winds, gusty means strong winds, and they are so far from these children's faces. Now it is a serious, in fact, metaphor. Children's faces are like rootless weeds. They are rootless. They don't belong to any caste or any strata of society, and they are pale. They are absolutely pale, without any color, but rootless. They don't have any root in the society, no familial rooting, no pedigree that they can boast of, and nobody wants to own them. Just like rootless weeds. Weeds are unwanted plants, actually, unwanted vegetation that every farmer knows that he has to pull it out. There's a phrase also in English, we say weed it out. Weed it out means unwanted things have to be thrown out, uprooted and thrown away. So if every farmer knows that he has to weed the unplanted vegetation, which actually eats the nutrients, the much needed nutrients, eats away the nutrients from the soil, and they cause damage to the crops. So these weeds are to be uprooted out and thrown away. And same is the case with these slum children, as the author Stephen Spender notices in this elementary slum classroom. The tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease. See, these lines again carry a lot of imagery. The poet notices those children who are actually looking so different from the normal ones, as we see in cities, and who have good nutrition. In particular, these three children, actually, whom he notices here. Number one, tall girl with her weighed down head. How can the head be weighed down until it is carrying some weight? Well, can you think something metaphoric over here? Yes, the girl's head is, or might be, weighed down with some troubles, or the anxieties, or the responsibilities, the prematurely handed responsibilities. Little children are handed responsibilities too too soon to in these families, slum families, you know. So the girl must have been the eldest daughter of their children, and she was made to work. She must have been a vegetable sender or doing household chores as a maid in someone's house, child labor, you know. So she has the responsibility of her younger siblings, young brothers and sisters, and of the family as well. Probably she may have been in for a marriage even, you know. So weighed down head. And that paper seeming boy, that paper is which color? White color. He is pale in skin, the boy, and paper seeming is probably may also may hint towards the thinness of the boy. The boy must have been really thin, undernutritioned, and with rat's eyes. Rat's eyes somehow indicates towards greed, you know. So the boy, these children don't have any access to good things of life, so they turn into thieves, and they have that greedy demeanor, greedy disposition. Whatever comes across their way, they feel like they are tempted towards stealing. So this is really very heart wrenching for the author to accept. Well, wouldn't it be natural for a visitor or anybody who happens to get into the class to note the student sitting over there? And exactly the same thing happens with Stephen Spender. He is just a visitor. He is no inspector. Being a poet, he may have he may have gotten curious to visit, or he may have been an invitee, a guest over there at the school. So he naturally would notice first the front line of the students sitting, and then the second line and all the students. So he notices one by one. First he notices the tall girl with a weighed down head. Is a tall girl, disproportionately tall girl. So you can understand, you must have seen those slum children, undernutritioned, who some of them are stunted in growth. They don't grow up to the right height, while there are others who grow slender, very thin, but they grow tall. It is a girl, and she may have the responsibilities early in her life, premature responsibilities. So she was not a happy girl. Second is the paper seeming boy. The paper seeming boy, that is, he must have been pale in his skin and very thin as well, with rat's eyes. Again, not looking a very healthy boy. He is looking little greedy, since innocence cannot be seen. The third image that the poet draws is that of this stunted, unlucky heir. Now, what does he call this boy as? An unlucky heir. Unlucky heir means we all can boast. You all can boast of your family. You have got good rootings in your family, Rajputs, Kshatriyas, or even businessmen, a son of businessmen, daughter of army men. You can boast of a family. You have a caste, you have a legacy, you have a village which you belong to, and you are very happy about it. And you feel lucky being the heir. Heir means you inherit a lot of wealth and good qualities, and perhaps some skills also, intelligence as well, from your parents. But these slum children, as it seemed to be, they don't inherit anything good. They inherited, if anything that they inherit is disease. So in this particular case, this boy, the stunted boned boy, the boy with stunted bones, not a very good growth of bones, with twisted bones rather, he could have had rickets or a deficiency of vitamin D. He seems to have inherited his father's disease. His father also may have had that disease. So poet wants to say that the disease and the deficiency and the misery goes down the family, along the generation, or among these slum people. So gnarled disease. Well, gnarled disease refers to the knobbly, rough and twisted bones. Especially with age it happens. But and it's not always that it happens, but in these children you see the gnarled disease very often, quite often. You must have seen the laborers and those undernutritioned or malnutritioned people suffering from such. So these children have inherited that disease from their fathers. He seems to be reciting something from his desk. He is sitting at a desk, The teacher may have asked him, like I said, but he's not just reciting those lines. He is reciting in a metaphoric way. His body, his attitudinal stances, his body is reciting, the structure of his body is reciting the disease of his father. That, you see the analogy as well as metaphor used over here. I'll talk about a little bit about the difference between metaphor and analogy as well. Well, this third image is that of a stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. So the third boy that the poet notices is immediately that boy who is sitting at his desk and reciting a lesson. Like teacher may have asked him to read out a lesson aloud, but he is reading, in fact, altogether a different story of his misery, of his disease. Metaphorically again speaking, it's a metaphor, like his reciting is his father's gnarled disease of twisted bones, stunted, twisted bones. That means his father must have been having some bone issues, because to grow, the bone and the marrow need nutrition. It needs hemoglobin and all so many vitamins and minerals through your nutrition. But do you think these slum children get, the slum children as well as the elders, do they get really all the nutrients and the kind of accessibility to good food? No. So they develop certain diseases like kwashiorkor, marasmus, pot belly, bulging eyes, protein deficiency diseases, carbohydrate deficiency diseases, even osteomalacia, rickets, deficiency of vitamin D causes bone diseases. So you must have seen them with short, stunted bodies, big upper part and little tiny legs, and the heights are not normal. Look at their eyes. Do they look to be healthy species? Not at all. So this boy is reciting altogether a different story of his illness, of his deficiency, of his malnutrition, undernutrition. Now coming to this fourth child that the poet notices. He says, at back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young child, that is, his eyes live in a dream. What dream? Of a squirrel's game in the tree room. Other than this, he says that at the back of the class, because naturally your eyes would rove from the front row to the back row. So Stephen Spender is very particular about it. He notes suddenly his eyes go to the back benches, and there is one little boy who is sitting unnoted. Nobody notes him. Even perhaps the teacher may not have noted him. It can happen, but the poet notices, and he sees clearly that the boy is sweet and young. His eyes live in a dream. His eyes is clearly an indication towards probably there can be two possibilities. Number one, probably either the child is too much of a dreamy person, too much of an imaginative person, which is more of a possibility over here, since the next very phrase he writes, his eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game. He says the child is watching through the window outside the class onto a tree, and the tree has got a squirrel frolicking around. There's a squirrel, as you know, the squirrels are habituated of, they move from one place to another, playing around and jumping and so very agile and alive. So the squirrel often attracts the attention of the children, isn't that so? So that little boy who is sitting at the back, he gets attracted by that squirrel more than what he finds interesting in the class. So he is interested in the squirrel playing outside in the tree, and the room in the tree, that is the squirrel's room, which is there in the tree, is more interesting for this boy. So this is one of the possibilities. This child could become a very creative person if given appropriate chances. He is imaginative, he is playful, he is innocent. The innocence, if you notice, children, innocence which is missing in the first three examples, the tall girl, the boy with the rat's eyes, the rat's eyes, the paper swimming boy, that is, and the third one who recites the disease of his own father, the boy's father. So this child still retains his innocence. Probably author wants sorry the poet wants an appropriate chance to be given to such children, number one. Number second, there could also be a possibility of the child, because he's written sweet and young, that child could be mentally aside, not actually in the right frame of mind. So the interpretation could be any according to your understanding, but then these are the four examples that the poet notices in the first stanza. His eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game. In tree room other than this. See the abundance of commas. Of squirrel's room, comma. In tree room, comma. Other than this. Now I just wanted to explain what other than this means. What is this? This is the classroom actually, where the poet is standing. The poet is in the classroom. That is room. And there is another room outside the classroom, that is the tree room, in which the squirrel is playing games. Right. So that last boy, the boy sitting in the dim class at the back of the class, is more interested in that room where the squirrel lives, and not this classroom. And children, just note, it is a dim class. It is a very dim class. Now that also connotes to the dim mood of the poet as well, and the dim mode of studying there, the dim mood of those children, the slum children sitting, and everything is dim about. So the classroom itself is dim, no light, that is, or very less light. The walls are sour, that is, they don't give a very good impression to the poet. So how can it create a very consonant atmosphere over there of studying? On sour cream walls, donations. On sour cream walls, students, it's pretty natural that after noticing the students, after noticing all of you, supposing enters, what would he see? Whenever the inspectors come in, or your principal sir comes in, enters your classroom, what does he or she notice? They notice the walls around. Even the teacher, when I enter your class, my first impulse is to look at you. Of course, I cast a gaze at the walls as well. I want to look at the walls. What are the decorative things, or what are the relevant study material that you have pasted on the wall from all the subjects? Isn't that so? Wall magazine also is a part of it. But here the poet is quite aghast, quite amazed and disappointed at the way the walls are given those donations from the rich people, or the so-called accommodations, or the concerned people. There have been donations actually. It's a trend among the rich people and from the schools, the big schools, their libraries, to donate to small slum schools. So in this particular case, the author cannot believe his eyes when he sees a Shakespeare's head in an elementary classroom, and he sees cloudless at dawn, a scenery. This is a scenery actually, and which depicts some cloudless skies and dawn. Dawn means the sunrise, the point at which the sun rises and the first rays of the sun enter the earth. They hit the surface of the earth. That is dawn. That is the rise of one's life. Metaphorically speaking, like you could also use it metaphorically. 2019 was the dawn of my career, because I opened my new business. One of the examples, dawn is always referred to some start, like sun rises and gives the day a good start. Same way, dawn can be referred to a very good start also, metaphorically speaking, like I said. And then suddenly his first impulse was to see the contrast between what the these students are like, what their lives are up to. Absolutely cloudy lives, foggy life, the end of their lives approaching near, as if, and in no way can you call it the rise of their lives, because the classrooms no way look like a classroom. It hardly seems like an ambience or an environment where the studies can be done. And moreover, he can do nothing but pity. Actually, he's angry as well. He's full of pity and anger and disappointment and depression also. This second stanza, which is a long one, includes his observation on what he notices around the children, and he takes pity, and he does not actually want that to happen. So he says civilized dome also he notices. He notices a cathedral dome, a civilized dome, like the traffic going in a dome, a big cathedral dome somewhere, to decorate the class, the walls. Now that is absolutely nuisance. It doesn't make any sense to these elementary children. Moreover, number one, the age. Their age is not the one to understand such high things, understand Shakespeare, understand landscape in particular, when their slum area, the locality where they live, are utterly dirty. So look at the contrast between what is in actuality in the lives of these slum children and what are the donations that actually decorate the walls of the classroom. He is being sarcastic also, as I tried to use in my speech as well. Just right at this moment, I too feel really bitter if these things really are a case in elementary classrooms. Like if these are the donations that are done, then it is real pity. So this, you see the beauty of these metaphors here. He says, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities. Probably a high flow thoroughfare of traffic also, with lights, traffic lights in city, and big town skyscrapers. The big malls could also be there in the scenery or in a picture that is donated and hung in the classroom. The children of the slum area who are sitting over here, and particularly the elementary children from the slum area, cannot relate with those pictures. On sour cream walls, donations. Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities. Do you see these extravagant, absolutely irrelevant things hung on the walls inside the classroom? And these are the donations from the rich people, so-called academicians, or those who are socially responsible people with affluent society, and from the politicians, and from the university libraries. Such things decorate their walls. Belled, flowery, Terrelli's valley, open-handed map awarding the world its world. Well, this needs explanation. This really needs explanation. Open-handed map awarding the world its world. Her face is pale and the hair uprooted. In fact, look at the grayish, rootless kinds of hair, undernutritioned hair. That means they don't have any possibility of growth even. So that is the connotation which Stephen Spender uses over here. Then he goes on to say, open-handed map awarding the world its world. There are two worlds, like I just talked about. The one world which is depicted in the geographical map hung on the walls, and this world being depicted in the palms of their hands. So whose world is being awarded to whom? Are we awarding the big world onto their world, or is it the other way around? Is it their world being awarded to the maps, to the big world, to the greater world that we all know? You all privileged students know. You and me have the privilege of knowing that world. We can go around the cities, beautiful cities and the world, and know and even visit Tirales or Srinagar or Ooty or Mount Abu or Scotland. But can they even have the possibility? Can they get even the chance of visiting Delhi or a city which is a little more considerate to them? Well, the dismal answer is no. So that is what is meant by awarding the world its world. Probably their world is being awarded to the big world in the map. So that is a contrast that poet wants to bring in here. So continuing, and yet for these children, these windows, not this map, these windows and not this map, this open-handed map, these maps that have been donated, these windows, the windows in the classroom, their world, where all their future is painted with a fog, a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky, far, far, again see the repetition of this word, far, far from rivers, capes, and stars of words. Again, a cartwheel of metaphors here. See the metaphors cartwheeling, so many literary devices, imaginations of the poet colored in metaphors and very implied meanings to be interpreted, children, from all this. See how poet says that the maps that have been donated to these children are of no use to them. Their world is different. Look this second line. Their world, where all their futures painted with a fog. Their world is nothing but foggy. You cannot see through it into the future. Future is painted, but the paint is foggy with no vision for the future. And what all can you see through the window? When you look through the window, the poet casts a glance, looks through the window outside, and all he can see is nothing but a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky. Well, that's a depressive mood of the poet, which is reflected outside also. He may have probably seen a lead sky also outside, because lead means dark grey, the color of the pencils, writing lead, with which you write with the help of a pencil. The color that is left on the paper, that is lead, and when the sky is of that color, it is very depressing. So they don't have any bright sky or any bright future. That is the meaning here. And their world is far away from the rivers and the beautiful rivers and the possibilities and the unlimited possibilities that rivers, capes, and stars offer us. Stars are representative of dreams. What do the stars represent? Dreams. Rivers represent civilization. So they are far from civilization. They are far from dreams. They are far from all sorts of good things, good and bright things that we all can boast of. We all can have. The affluent people can have, but they are not so lucky. Actually, the person who is in your league and someone whom you can think of attaining to that his level or her level would inspire you. But in this third stanza, the poet, as I read in the second stanza also, talks about the map that is hung on one of the walls in the classroom, which is a bad example for the students, as the poet says, because the map is so far-fetched, so high in their actually in its own esteem, that the students of an elementary classroom, you forget about them thinking of those Amazon rivers or even Himalayas, that the Himalayas mountains or river Ganges depicted in that physical map or even the political map. These geographical maps hung over there on the walls are just decorative pieces, nothing related to studies of an elementary class. All they know is the slum area, the dirty, squalid slum area, the stinking lanes, the lead sky, no possibilities in the skies for them, and all people around them demotivating them, muttering obscenities, using abusive language. Nothing beautiful and lovely about them or the places around them. Well, that is what the third stanza is about. Let's go about reading it. Surely, Shakespeare is wicked. The map, a bad example, with ships and sun and love tempting them to steal. Well, this refers to the irrelevance of Shakespeare in an elementary classroom. You easily can tell what the elementary school children, like children from grade 1 to grade 5, class 1 to class 5, what would they understand of Shakespeare? So they would find him wicked. And moreover, look at his dress. He belongs to a royal family, and his portrait always would be seen in a different kind of dress. And what to say of the map that is pasted or hung on the wall inside the classroom? Surely, Shakespeare is wicked, the map a bad example, with ships and sun and love tempting them to steal. Question number 1. Tempting them. Who are being tempted? Tempting whom? Tempting those slum children sitting in the classroom. The slum elementary children. Okay. Now, why does the poet use these words, ships and sun and love? Where are the ships and the sun and the love actually in the classroom? Yes, think over and you will find the answers. Love is in the poetry of Shakespeare. Actually, Stephen Spender knows well that Shakespeare has written, if you may also be knowing, and you might as well must know, that Shakespeare's sonnets as well as his poems are mostly on love and on a certain dark lady friend. Well, so his love sonnets, which his portrait depicts, Shakespeare, whenever we talk of Shakespeare, it's love and art and the power of time comes to mind. But these philosophical high themes, these high ideas and this theme of love are actually of no relevance to these young children. In the first place, any child of this age, of the elementary class, would never understand, would not actually be related to any of the themes that Shakespeare is known for. And when we talk of these elementary school children, elementary class children in a slum area, you imagine love, particularly for these elementary children, and Shakespeare, no use at all. So love. Now, such beautiful landscape with the rising sun and this beautiful ship being reflected in the ocean is hung in the classroom on the walls. And do you think it is related to their lives? But what about ships and sun? Well, ships and sun are directly correlated to those sceneries. The Tyrolese Valley, Austrian province, has, the Tyrolese Valley landscapes are hung and pasted on the walls. The scenic views, the cathedral domes with the cities, the thoroughfares, the sun shining overhead, reflecting itself in the oceans, sea, and the ships also. Well, these things actually are pasted or hung on the walls of the classroom. But then these things do not make any sense to those elementary class children. That is why the author is all the more satirical. He says the children know nothing but to steal, so they either make, as you have seen, they make moustaches on high profile people's portraits or their photographs. So then they make fun of those people whom they don't know. Their portraits are damaged, either torn away by those children, and the ships and the sun, those scenic views also, they make no sense. The children actually feel like stealing. They are tempted to steal and nothing else. So you cannot teach them high morals or values unless they get a minimum material need for them, that is food and shelter, and yes, a very basic education which is relevant to their lifestyle, to their locality, and to the life statement that they are living. Now let's connect the clauses here to make it simple, because there are so many commas and dashes also in the poem. As you see, at the end of the first clause, after example, there's a comma, and after steal there is a dash over here. I have depicted it, I have pointed it out with the blue ink over here, with the blue pointer. Now let's read. Let's connect which connects to what so as to make simple sense to you students as well. Surely Shakespeare is wicked and the map is a bad example. That is pretty clear. Now, for whom? For whom Shakespeare is wicked? For those children, naturally, for those elementary school slum children. But but this poet has chosen to use this word lives, because Shakespeare and the map are bad examples for those lives who live in slums. That means it is, of course, referring to those slum children, but he has chosen to use this word lives. So Shakespeare and map are bad examples for those lives who slyly turn into their cramped holes, and those lives who live from fog to endless night. Fog, you remember? In the previous stanza, he had talked of fog. The street ends into fog, narrow lead sky and the foggy streets. So fog is referring to the day of theirs, the day which is actually not bright, it is full of fog, misty day. He cannot see through it because their present is absolutely meaningless. And as the day withers into night, as the sun sets, even the night does not end. So that means the poet wants to reiterate and repeat that thing in a very metaphorical, beautiful way, that their life does not make sense either in the day or in the night, or let's say neither in the day nor in the night. So they have no present and no future at all. But what about those cramped holes? What about those cramped holes? Don't they collude or indicate to those holes made by rats and snakes and rodents in the earth? They just come into the earth, perhaps after they have gone on for the search of food, and they have fended for themselves, and they finally have to rest in their homes. So they return to their homes, and look at the state of how those holes are, very cramped, very cranky. You just hate to look at them. And imagine if people lead such lives, the humanity is forced to lead such lives. Well, Stephen Spender exactly talks about the homes, the so-called homes that the slum people live in, the shanties, the dilapidated, almost crumbled down, broken homes made of mud, tarpaulin. If you remember, we had done that poem Lost Spring. Or on their slag heap, these children wear skins peeped through by bones. Well, what does slag means? What does slag mean? Slag means that refuse, that material, that matter actually, which is cast aside, which is filtered from the useful metal. Whenever there is a smelting, there's one process called smelting of iron, the purification of iron in the factories, or for that matter any metal. When it is purified, when it is refined through a process called smelting, you see here, then certain refuse matter is cast aside and it is dumped into dumping grounds, right? That is called slag. That is useless, absolutely useless, unusable material. Now the poet is very careful in choosing his imagery here. He says slag heap, on their slag heap. That is, it seems like their bodies, these slum children, their bodies are nothing but slag, heaps of slag, unusable, just matter, unusable, refuse, dumped matter. It's very logical. These are the dumps of society. We have dumped them aside by the margins of our society. We don't need them. Do we need them? Do we really? We don't. So these children, and to add to this imagery, the author goes on to say these children wear skins peeped through by bones. Peeped through by bones, as if the bones inside their body are trying to pierce through their skins. So skinny, so thin they are, so undernutritioned, underfed they are, that it seems as if they are wearing skins. Just as we wear clothes, they wear skins. And skins are so thin and so cloth-like that it seems like the bones are about to break open the skin and rupture their bodies. They are so skinny. Moreover, he goes on to say spectacles of steel with mended glass. Well, this leads us to imagine. Probably, author may have noted one of the children wearing spectacles, but those spectacles are not the ones that we wear, not the kind that we wear. Probably the glasses may have got broken, and the rims were of steel, and the glass cannot be mended. Do you think the glass, once broken, can it be mended? It cannot be mended. Glass cannot be mended. Just think, wherever you may have seen, you must have seen in these years of your life, must have seen some smashed glass or broken smithereens of glass. The bottle bits, the bits of bottle, like if you smash a bottle, or you must have seen on the roadside or perhaps anywhere, glass broken. Can you mend that back again? Can you fix it? Even if it's Fevicol or quick fix, you cannot mend it. The only way out is recycling and make recyclable glass. But then recycled glass, that is. So probably the author throws in yet another powerful metaphor. He says, just as the glass cannot be mended once broken, it cannot be mended. These children's lives also are unmendable. They are beyond repair. It's like broken glass. So he's utterly dejected, disappointed, and he throws in imagery after imagery. This is called imagery, actually. Image after image, powerful metaphors. On their slag heap, these children wear skins peeped through by bones, and spectacles of steel with mended glass, like bottle bits on stones. Now, some very heavy, thick metaphors here. Slag heap, as I marked them in blue. Slag heap. What is this slag heap? This is their body, actually. Slag refers to that waste residue of iron and of the minerals that are recycled in factories, but the residue which is thrown out, dump of the industries. So the heap, these children, these children look like as if their bodies are heaps of slag, heaps of unusable flesh, unusable lives, and they wear skins as if, just as we wear clothes are so thin, but as if they are wearing skins on their body, and the body is comprised of nothing but bones, as if the bones are peeping through the skins. The author can clearly see the bones peeping through the skins, as if they would rupture through them, come out of it. So let's repeat. Wear skins peeped through by bones, skins peeped through by bones, and spectacles of steel with mended glass, like bottle bits on stones. All of their time and space are foggy slum, so blot their maps with slums as big as doom. Well, students, it suddenly strikes me that a powerful symbolism is quite obvious here in this phrase, bottle bits on stones. Bottle bits on stones. You must have seen in movies when a villain takes up a bottle of Coca-Cola or any of the cold drink bottle and he smashes it on a stone, and the bottle gives in. The bottle cannot survive when it comes to banging or bumping into a stone. Stone perhaps symbolizes our stony attitude towards these slum children. The society's stony attitude, the attitude of politicians, of academicians as well. Look what kind of donations they are up to. A portrait of a Shakespeare, books which are of no worth to them. Look at the ambience that the classroom has. Look at the sour cream walls and all that is ugly, all that is distasteful, which is not actually education. So we are stones actually, and when they bang onto us, when they are smashed onto us, they are broken. That is, they stand no chance of surviving against, when pitted up against the rich people, the mainstream society. So the poet perhaps is utterly disillusioned, and he says, kindly get them their due, get them to live in the mainstream, bring them, use any which way, any which means, but bring them back into the society because they are a part of us. Well, this doom is actually, according to the Christian biblical mythology, it is mentioned in Christian Bible as well. It's a biblical reference actually, where the author points us to a scenario when the world would end and everything in the world would be destroyed and the buildings would come crumbling down owing to some natural disaster, or probably the earth would have spent its lifetime, and that day we will all be answerable to God. It is the last day of judgment, as it is mentioned there in the biblical mythology or biblical reference. But that day would be so, that day the scenario on the world would be an ugly scenario, because none of the beautiful buildings would exist, none of the rivers that so silently and majestically flow would be seen that day, and the people would be no more, no life would exist. So that scenario, does that scenario exist at present as well, at present in the slum area? Well, Stephen Spender actually thinks so when he looks and imagines the slum areas where these little children who are so called studying in the elementary classroom, when they would get back to their homes, and those slum areas, if you remember, where Mukesh and Sahib also took us in the last spring chapter, you remember, in Flamingo, the same book, Mukesh had taken to his slum dwelling, a dilapidated, crumbled house made of mud and covered with tarpaulin. Anish Jung was taken there. So that kind of slum area, does it not look like a doomsday scenario? The poet actually wants us to imagine that those slums are not depicted on the maps and the geographical, beautiful physical maps that are hung and pasted inside the walls of these very elementary classrooms. The poet is actually enraged and angered also. He says, why don't you depict and blot these maps, these beautifully looking maps with so majestic rivers and mountains, Amazon, Nile, Cape of Good Hope, Red Sea, Black Sea, River Ganges, this Aravalli Hills, Deccan Plateau, peninsular regions. So much beauty seen and depicted on the map. Is that of any relevance to these children? Why don't you depict these slums also onto the maps? And if at all we decide to depict the slum also on the maps, do you think students, it will ever look beautiful? The map would look even lookable? It will never. It will become a very ugly thing to look at. And that is exactly the state with these children. Their map is only their slum, not this beautific scenery or beautific scenario that is the geographical map hung as donation in the classrooms. So that is what he means over here. Well, that is how this stanza ends up on an utter note of disappointment on the part of the poet. But in my next video, in the second part of this lesson, I'll sure come up with the last stanza where poet suddenly, rather he decides to embrace hope, because it has a hopeful ending in the next part, which would be a small part, don't worry, not this long, not as long as this one. This is almost nearing 1 hour. I'm sorry for this, it's a long video, but now that you have come this far to the end of this video, simply shows you are very interested in how the poem ends. And Stephen Spender is an expert, very skilled at bringing the poems to a very hopeful ending. So next part we will see how he hopes and he expects that the powers to be, the authorities, the politicians and the bureaucrats of our society take due note of these people and give them justice. Well, for now, thank you so much and happy learning. Revise and revise. Thank you.